right where it hurts, in the wallet, by way of shuttering the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Though, while Biden was eager to talk tough, he was also light on details about just exactly how he was going to do that, going only so far as to say,
I promise you we'll be able to do it.
Biden's warning comes after his administration waived sanctions on the pipeline last year in an effort, according to the White House, to rebuild the U.S.'s relationship with Germany.
Fox's Kevin Corke in Washington. President Putin met Monday with French President Macron, looking for ways to defuse the crisis at Ukraine's border. President Biden has accepted the resignation of his chief science advisor after an internal investigation found that Dr. Eric Lander had mistreated his staff. America is listening to Fox News.
What's a better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than celebrating it at Mezcla with their 3-course meal? Starting off your meal with a salad appetizer, followed by a main entree of your choice, and of course, to top it all off, to make Valentine's as sweet as the day itself, a melting lava cake with vanilla ice cream and caramel sauce. So what are you waiting for? Call them at 671-649-2652 or visit mezclaguam.com for reservations. See you there.
The U.S. Supreme Court says redrawn congressional district maps in Alabama can stay for now.
Republican hopes of holding 6 of Alabama's 7 House seats improved Monday when the Supreme Court overruled a lower court order that the state redraw its congressional districts. A 3-judge lower court had ruled the state likely violated the Federal Voting Rights Act by diluting black voters by not creating a second district representing their population. The Supreme Court will at a later date decide whether the map drawn by Alabama's Republican-controlled legislature violates the Voting Rights Act, but likely won't affect elections in the state until 2024. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
The state Supreme Court in Ohio, for a second time, has rejected congressional district boundaries newly redrawn by Republican lawmakers and sent them back for a third try. The mayor of Ottawa asking for help from the Canadian government to put down the truckers' protest, now calling it an insurrection.
A state of emergency has been declared in the Canadian capital of Ottawa. What began more than a week ago as a protest by Canadian truckers over proof of vaccination when crossing the border from the U.S. has erupted into a massive demonstration. Similar protests spread to other locations, but the demonstration in Ottawa is the largest and most contentious. Organizers say they want an end to all vaccine mandates. They vow to remain until their demands are met.
Fox's David Lee Miller, Ottawa's police chief, says they will be relentless in pursuing anyone who supports the protest financially. A Biden administration task force has issued a set of recommendations that could make it easier for federal workers and contractors to unionize. The report argues that a decades-long drop in union membership has coincided with a rising share of income going to the top 10% of earners. The goal of the report is to increase unionization in part through the heft of the federal government as an employer. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day, this is Congressman Nicholas. While local COVID-19 testing has unfortunately become less available lately, there are 4 free at-home federally available COVID tests that you can have to test yourselves and your families as needed. Please contact your congressional office at 671-475-6453 or at michael.snicholas@mail.house.gov to find out how we can help you access those tests.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets. even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Absolutely right. I start out the show every day with the respectful reading of the Second Amendment, spent a lot of time talking about the Constitution of the United States and similar matters. So if that's what you're interested in, you're in the right place. If that's not what you're interested in, well, you're in the right place.
Absolutely.
Let's start out with Jimmy Cutney. Another super bland editorial from the Daily News. Our view, Micronesian outreach efforts should be commended. Groups such as Nichu Mary's, Chucky's Women of Guam, and Manilu have been working to get information on Wuhan virus tests, vaccine, and booster shots to members of the Micronesian community. They should be commended for their efforts. While social media videos, online updates have been a big part of the national and local government's Wuhan virus education efforts, these outreach strategies don't reach everyone, and grassroots organizations have been picking up the slack. Guam as a whole has a vaccination rate of about 94%. Wow.
And still the mandate.
Yeah. I think I know a couple of people that are not vaccinated.
I'm not raising my hand, even though my hand is up in the air.
All right. But the rate among Chukis here is 62%, and for other non-Chamorro Pacific Islanders, it's about 75%. While 37% of Guam residents have had booster shots, only 4% of Chukis have. The rate for other non-Chamorro Pacific Islanders is 10%. Joel Setic, project director of the Micronesian Resource Center One Shop at Manyalu, said the language barrier is a big part of the reason why the Wuhan virus prevention message hasn't been getting to Micronesians. Another reason for anyone doing outreach efforts to keep in mind is that not everyone has internet access and social media accounts. While appointments for vaccines and boosters are easy to make if you have computer access, just click the link, select your time, and make your booking. The process can be more complicated for those who don't have a computer, a smartphone, or a data plan. Instead of reaching thousands of people with video shared on social, Setic and his colleagues have gone door to door speaking to individuals. Nadine Songani, member of Nechumaris, said one of the most effective ways to get the message to Micronesians has been setting up outside of church services. To help people register for vaccines. Members of her group have assisted at clinics where they help people fill out forms and provided information on their shots. Songani said her group is also planning a revival of last year's Vaccine Jam event with music and prizes.
No lottery? Because you had to apply online for that.
Really? These efforts are labor-intensive, but they save lives and lead to less serious infections. We are fortunate to have Setic, Songani, and others doing this work on Guam. Well, let's give them a big hand, Jose. That's about all you're going to get out of this one, PDN.
Wait, see, if the churches weren't closed early on, they probably could have got these vaccinations out earlier.
Very possible. There really wasn't a whole lot of sense in closing the churches. All right, let's turn to the card. As usual, I start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I go from there to Tatua versus Public Law 36-34. Kids versus summer vacation. You know how that one's going to come out. Tall Tales versus the CCU. Guam Study versus Accuracy. Elau versus BJ. This is a continuing story. Levin versus Fido. I don't think the Attorney General has sued his dog yet, but give him time. And then Moore, Weir, and Underwood versus our community. And we were so busy yesterday that we skipped right past that moment right after the halftime show when we were supposed to be showing Hope Cristobal's screen test. But we're going to do it today for sure. So make sure that you're in your chair with your seatbelt fastened right after the big halftime show, because we will run the Hope Cristobal screen test again. And if you have friends who may not have seen it, you might want to give them a heads up. Okay, systemic racism. I don't know that I need to talk about this anymore. You just need to know that once you see this red rice, don't dare call it orange, because if you do, you're going to be accused of telling the truth and being factual, and therefore counter-narrative, and you might get in trouble for that. We, on Tall Tales, Jose and I do the best that we can to pierce the narrative and bring it back around to the truth and the facts. Next item on the card is Tatuha versus Public Law 36-34. And once again, Tatua strikes again. They have an agenda for their 6:30 meeting of the Tumon Harmon Municipal Council, February 10 on a Thursday, and they have published an agenda. And here's how it goes. They start out with a call to order, roll call, recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance and interfresi, approval of minutes of January 13, Mayor's Report, A, Mayor's Council of Guam News, B, Guam Land Use Commission Application 220-31A, the applicant Vista Del Mar International, represented by Daniel Swavely, is requesting approval of a tentative development plan for a proposed hotel resort with water park, etc. Now, we've been through this before. The next item under new business is another Land Use Commission application for a height variance. Now, this was supposed to have been decided by that hybrid committee, but the last time they had to cancel out because it appeared there were open government law violations committed by the Tumon Harmon Municipal Planning Council. Denied. So here we are again. Item 6, Sister Command's Report. Item 7, Youth Congress Representative Report. Item 8, Old Business. Item 9, New Business.
Didn't the AG's office hold a seminar on open government compliance?
Absolutely, yeah.
Was there no attendance?
Well, apparently nobody from Tatua went. And item 10, committee report. So once again, this notice of the meeting is violative of the public law, which means that any action taken at this meeting is void. So if you're one of the environmental wackos that doesn't want this thing to go forward, here you are right here. Department of Education. Now, you'd think that educators would be smart enough to follow directions, right? But here we go. Division of Special Education of the department. They're going to have a meeting on February 6th. February, looks like February 56. It's hard to read.
Retroed?
Yeah. And then they've got minutes, deputy superintendent report, chairperson's report, subcommittee report, new business, No, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's really not that hard, folks, if you just take a moment to read the public law that tells you how to go about doing this.
Is this really telling us that, not about compliance, but these meetings, they're just winging it?
Yes, that's what it's telling us.
Amazing.
Because I've mentioned before that in addition to the obvious benefit of having 3634 on the books, which means we now know what these guys are doing, what they're up to, and we don't have to spend a whole lot of time to find out. But second, it requires them to do some planning. They can't be writing the agenda of the meeting on the back of an envelope on the way to the restaurant where they're going to meet.
And this really isn't taking huge amounts from the coffers, but some of these people are getting stipends for these meetings too.
That's true. Yeah.
From government funds.
And maybe they shouldn't if they're not complying with the law. So, yeah, in addition to giving the public notice of what these boards and commissions are doing, they actually have to plan ahead. Because in order to make the 7-day deadline, I think you've got to have your copy to the newspaper 9 days out, which means that you got to have your agenda done at least 9 days before the meeting. So you got to do some planning. You can't just wait until the last minute. What are we going to talk about today? I don't know. Let's have an executive session. Figure it out. All right, next is kids versus summer vacation. GDU. Right. Yeah, school's out. Teacher, let the fools out. No more pencils, no more books, no more teachers. Crabby looks.
You invented that, didn't you?
Well, I can still remember it. I can remember how happy we were, leaving school on that last day before, which was right around Memorial Day, last day before summer vacation. GDUE asks senators to waive 180 school day requirement. Now, I've mentioned this before. This is a misuse of the word waive. What the GDUE is asking is for the senators to change the law. Senators don't have the ability to say, oh, you want a waiver from the law? Okay, you have a waiver. No, it doesn't work that way.
Hey, bro, can you waive? That's how you do it.
Exactly. I forgot about that. Yeah. A request to waive the 180-day instructional day requirement for public schools was sent to the Guam legislature on Monday, according to Superintendent John Fernandez. The public school system is in violation of the mandate, having missed 24 days of in-person instruction at the beginning of the school year. The missed school days, however, were out of GDOE's hands. At the time, the number of Wuhan virus cases had reached into the triple digits, promoting a suspension of classroom learning for compulsory-aged schools on island. Public Law 34-105 requires at least 180 instructional days for GDOE students, broken down to 900 hours for elementary and 1260 for middle and high school. This converts to 900 instructional hours, which is the equivalent of 54,000 minutes. Well, at least somebody over there knows higher mathematics. Yeah, higher mathematics. I remember in first grade when I learned some higher mathematics, I learned that 2 and 2 is 4, and 4 and 4 is 8. And then right above that, right after that, I learned that 2 million plus 2 million is 4 million. And 4 million plus 4 million is 8 million. You talk about higher mathematics.
That's a lot of fingers.
It is. Yeah, I'd take my shoes off for that one. As it stands, the violation also leaves the Department of Education, the government of Guam, potentially liable for failure to provide an adequate public education. In order to rectify the violation, it's not using the word rectify correctly, the Department of Ed and the Education Board officials agreed that seeking a waiver from the legislature was the best option. The waiver drew overwhelming support from middle and high school students.
I'm shocked.
Well, I
am shocked.
I was just swept off my feet when I read this article. You know, gosh, what's the world coming to? Yeah. Out of 340, the island-wide Board of Governing Students conducted a survey. Out of 348 responses, 56.3 or 213 students supported the waiver and felt no need to extend the school year. Wow. You know, such wisdom. It reminds me of one of Mark Twain's sayings. Mark Twain said, you know, youth is such a wonderful thing. It's a pity it's wasted on the young. Yeah, but you know, if there are 28,000 kids in the system, let's say half of them are capable of responding to a survey and they only got 213 students, I don't see a mandate here. And of the 213, 56% said yes, which means 44% said no. But they felt that there was no need to extend the school year. The decision was unanimously approved by board officials, some of whom believed that making up 24 missed days would not benefit students. Now let's take that and extrapolate it. Okay, I have thought about this. I've studied it. I've done research. The kids missed 24 days of school, but making up those days, spending 24 more days in class would do, let's see, what did they say? Would not benefit the students. Well, if 24 wouldn't, how about 44? Right? In fact, how about 180? If coming to class doesn't benefit the schools, we could extend that to 180 days, keep the teachers on the payroll and everybody else, but the kids don't have to come to school. Think of all the money we could save if we did that. This is a thought process somewhere on the Board of Education.
Thinking how many kids miss school during a regular school year and going, remember that pandemic and you said 24 days doesn't matter?
Yeah.
I'm going to take 24 days
Yeah,
off.
everybody, you set people like to use this, you set a precedent. It means that I could stay home for the first 24 days of school this year, no harm, no foul. But, if this is the approach, it appears that the school board members and the students are of like mind. We don't want to screw up anybody's summer vacation. Now, I can understand that. And if it were a cost-benefit analysis, on the one hand, we've got summer vacation. On the other hand, we lost 24 days. These are the advantages and disadvantages. But to say making up the 24 days would do no good as a justification for doing what you want to do.
Tell me the logistics of putting those 24 days into practice. Probably could cost more. That could be an argument.
Exactly, yeah. That could be, but that it would do no good is not an argument. It's not an argument. This is what it is. It's a cop-out. As part of the request, Fernandez also asked senators to waive the service learning requirement for graduating seniors, which is a good idea. The requests for the waivers are now in the hands of senators. In March 2020, Department of Education was successful in seeking a waiver from the Guam legislature to the 180 instructional day requirement mandated by law for the last school year. It wasn't a waiver, they just changed the law.
Okay, not to harp on a thing though, Bob, but remember, we're still in a sole authority health emergency.
That's true.
So where is the governor in all of this? Where is her thinking minds over there at Adelup? Because they're the ones that impose this.
That's very true. Running for cover, hiding. Just never mind this. Just remember me at the election time. For the current school year, education officials are optimistic the legislature will grant the waiver once again. I imagine the kids are optimistic also. Okay, you want to take a break, Jose?
Let's go.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Yeah, yes, there are people. How did you know? Here's the deal. Take your used car to the guys over at Nissan Guam, and they're going to take a look at it. And if they love it, and they probably will because you take care of things, you could get all kinds of money on this, cash for your car. Used car values are higher than ever before. They'll take all makes and models. Doesn't need to be a Nissan or Infiniti. They'll give you a super fast appraisal, and you say, shoot, sign the papers. Now, you can use that as down payment on a brand new Nissan if you like, or maybe you need a used car. Maybe you're sitting around going, well, I guess somebody's going to come in, they're moving to Guam and whatever, and they're going to need a ride. So let's go to Nissan Guam and check out the great sale they've got. The Nissan Ninja sale is going on. So all those used cars that people are taking in, well, they refurb them, change out the oil and the belts and all of the things that need to get taken care of, and turn them practically into brand new automobiles and give you some incredible savings, up to $14,000 on the used car inventory. Go and take a look at it. NissanGuam.com.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are. Next item on the card is Tall Tales versus the CCU, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. Here's a story from the PDN. Consolidated Commission on Utilities will meet Thursday morning to discuss pay adjustments for the top managers of the island's power and water agencies. Those managers did not receive a pay raise last year despite receiving satisfactory performance ratings because the CCU voted against it, citing the pandemic's impact on the economy. The CCU is the elected policy-making board for the power and water authorities. The CCU will consider pay adjustments for GPA General Manager John Beneventi, who makes $225,000. GWA Authority General Manager Maget Berdadzu, who makes $174,990. GPA Chief Financial Officer John Kim, who makes $135,000. GWA Financial Officer Taling Titano, who makes $137,737. GPA General Counsel D. Graham Botha Jr., who makes $135,000. And CCU Board Secretary Bernadette Sablon, who makes $72,000. That's big bucks. The CCU, during a meeting in December, gave Benavente a score of 372 and Bordazzo a score of 3.9, a rating scale of 5, which is considered satisfactorily meeting expectations. The CCU in November 2018 gave pay raises to several top managers at GWA and GPA, but rescinded those raises in 2019 after the Attorney General stated the raises were illegally discussed during a closed-door meeting by the CCU. Bordazzo's $190,000 salary was rescinded. Both his $144,772 salary was rescinded. Kim's $153,157 salary was rescinded, and several employees were required to return the cash bonuses they had received. Guam law prohibits Guam government officials from discussing salaries in meetings that aren't open to the public, according to the Attorney General. The salaries were discussed during executive session in 2018, then approved during a public meeting, with no discussion about the amount of raises or bonuses or who received them. Okay, so why is this Tall Tales versus the CCU? Because we're going to have to continue the battle that started back in 2018. You read about how the CCU gave raises in executive session, ironically with counsel sitting in the executive session. They had to roll those back. The raises were made pursuant to evaluations. I sunshined the evaluations. CCU put up a fight, said, no, that's, guess what? A personnel matter. They still think that works over there. Oh, that's a personnel matter. And after a while, 3 members of the CCU said, no, we're going to release those evaluations. But after that, the CCU adopted an internal rule that said only when any one of those 7 members of the staff who report directly to the CCU, when they consent to the release of their evaluations, can we do it? And I protested. I said, so what you're doing then is you're giving a single person the ability to veto the open government law. Well, it's a personnel matter. So this is what they finally came up with on the advice of Vince Leon Guerrero, who was conflicts counsel, who had to be brought in because both of the 2 regular counsels, including Graham Botha, were disabled from dealing with the matter because of their own conflicts of interest. So Leon Guerrero said, you cannot evaluate these 7 in public. You have to do it in executive session. But you cannot discuss salary in executive session at all. You don't even use the word. Then after you've done that, then you can come out into open session and then you can set salary. But you can't talk about the evaluations that took place in executive session.
How do you justify the salaries?
You don't. And that's when I wrote them a letter talking about examining the entrails of a pig. It's crazy.
X-ray vision.
It's absolutely crazy. So my suspicion is they're going to do it again. And I will send them a sunshine asking for the basis upon which the salary increases were made, like the evaluations. And 2 of the members of the board will probably say, "Yeah, that's how can we give raises without an evaluation?" 3 of the members, including Chairman Joey Duane, no, that is a personnel matter. We don't want to get sued. This kind of talk. So we'll just have to wait until that happens. But you know what's going to happen already. Okay, next on the item, I've got the Guam study versus accuracy. And I'm not going to go into this very, very far today. It goes like this. Study reveals Chamorros connected to culture but feel like second-class citizens. And this is something that KUAM ran. The community report is in for the 2021 Guahan survey. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about the Guahan survey. The study was funded by the MIT Center for International Studies and MIT Priscilla King Gray Public Service Center. The full report can be viewed and downloaded online at guamstudy.org/results. So I read the results when they came out, and I formed some initial conclusions that I'll spend a little bit more time on later on, probably when Michael Bavacqua writes a column about this, no doubt. First of all, there's nothing scientific about the study. They just took a random group of 300 people. They didn't purport to have a representative sample of the population. And I don't think they did the standard statistical workup of their questions, chi-square and all that kind of stuff that PhDs understand. And it has the dimensions of a push-pull.
So the questions are loaded.
The questions are loaded. So here's an example of a push-pull. This isn't a push-pull, but it has some of the, sort of the flavor of the push-pull. Let's say that I'm going to run for the legislature, and I sent out a 3-question survey. Question number 1, would you vote for Bob Klitzkie if you knew that he spoke tomorrow? Now, that really is a way of saying, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't, yeah. In other words, it's not a means of testing opinion, it's a means of influencing opinion. And that's exactly what this so-called community report is about. But I'll give you a pretty complete workup on it later on this week, probably on Friday. Okay, that brings us to the continuing story of BJ and Ed Elau, GMI. And this, I have the story that ran on the Daily News. The Daily News is finally catching up here. The Daily News says the events that led up to the resignation of Cecil Buddy Orsini as executive director of the Guam Contractors Licensing Board warrant further investigation, said Public Auditor Benjamin Cruz. If I need to, I will make a special effort to forward it to the Attorney General for his review and determination. In a report issued Thursday, Cruz found that Orsini committed fraud in relation to a dispute between 2 companies over a baggage handling system contract with the airport. The Guam Airport Authority gave the project to Menzies Aviation, and JMI Edison protested the award, stating that Menzies did not have a necessary license from the contractor's board. Orsini signed off on a document titled Decisions and Findings, which held that Menzies would need a license to perform the work. The document was a, quote, verbatim reiteration of a draft document that JMI President Ed Elau previously emailed to him and issued without the needed approval of 4 board members. The Office of the Attorney General confirmed it received the Office of Public Accountability's report Monday afternoon. Governor Leon Guerrero on Monday appointed Linda Ibanez, Deputy Director of Public Works, to serve as acting executive director for the licensing board. JMI Vice President John Elau on Monday confirmed that his company has plans to take OPA, that's BJ, to court over the dismissal of JMI's appeal. JMI requested a hearing on the allegations raised against it, and the public auditor refused. Instead, our elected public auditor rendered his judgment based upon his false perception of impropriety and not based on the facts and evidence, a release from JMI stated. The OPA's decision falsely claimed that the contractor's licensing board needed 4 board votes to issue a letter detailing the agency's findings and decision. The release stated and wrongly invalidated the actions of another agency. So And that's what BJ said in his report. He said that they didn't, JMI didn't try to back away from what I'm going to call the Orsini paper. They said because Orsini issued it, BJ is bound by it. Don't be looking for any infirmities here. You just have to comply with it. Cruz said that Orsini's actions left it unclear as to whether Menzies needed a license to carry out the airport contract. I was leaning towards the appellant argument that there was a need for a license, BJ said, but now I can't depend on any document from the contractor's licensing board. So I don't know. Cruz said his office is currently writing a decision for another dispute, this time over a contract to install wireless internet service in 40 public schools. Technologies for Tomorrow, Inc. was awarded the project by the Department of Education last year, but G4S Security Systems is protesting the bid, as you were the award. According to the OPA report issued last week, in the G4S case, the appellant argued that the successful bidder lacked a required license from the board. Appellant relied on a document signed by Director Orsini, also labeled Findings and Decisions, which stated that a contractor's license was required for the scope of the work of the award, very similar in form to that submitted by JMI to Director Orsini herein. The report goes on to state, board investigator Nita Bailey acknowledged that it is the board which is to decide such issues, and confirmed that no board meeting had taken place regarding the issues raised in the G4S case. When asked whether the incident with JMI Edison would affect the G4S appeal, Cruz said, "You've watched enough TV. If the credibility of a person is questioned in one case, what's going to happen in the other?" And that's the tragedy of this whole thing. It kind of reminds me of the great certificate of title war back during the wars of bishop succession. Yeah, and the total lack of credibility of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission when all of this wrongdoing came to light. Pica Fair and said, we'll investigate ourselves, and came back. We didn't find that anybody did anything wrong. When you do stuff like that, you might as well pack your briefcase and go home, because people are not going to believe in you. General Manager Teresa Kasperbauer Sakazaki said via email that the company had not relied solely on any findings from Orsini in their appeal. We want to make clear that our case is completely separate from the JMI case. I don't blame her.
Already they're running up. They're jumping ship.
In the G4S appeal, we had testimony presented by a board employee who supervised investigations regarding contractors' license complaints that went to the merits of G4S appeal. Her company also presented testimony from Guam DOE and the winning bidder supporting the claim. G4S was disappointed in the events that took place, she said, and believes their appeal for the contract had merit and should be granted. And then I've got the same story ran a release from GMI Edison. I think I've already covered this. Yeah, I already have. So it's a long, complicated story. And in the midst of it, somebody else jumped up, and that was James Martinez from the Guam Contractors Association, a group of contractors, obviously, who are very concerned about having to compete against non-licensed foreign contractors. And I can understand that.
It's a very legitimate concern.
A very legitimate concern, very amply explained by Bob Kelly yesterday, that that if we're going to have a contractors licensing board and a public auditor, then we can't have foreign companies come in here without contractors licenses bidding on these jobs. So some good come out of this, but it won't happen if the governor handles this the same way she handled the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. In other words, well, we'll just not talk about it too much and let some time go by, and maybe people will forget about it.
What's that term? Sota prim? Is that what this?
Sota prim. Yeah, sota prim. Just let it go. Yeah, that's a good one, Jose. Yeah, that apparently was the approach at the Land Trust Commission, and let's hope it's not the same thing at the Contractors Licensing Board. Now, one of the things that came up was that the board hasn't met since September. No quorum. So when I was talking with Ray about it this morning, if that's the case, that doesn't give Buddy Orsini the ability to substitute his judgment for the board. Not at all. It gives him the opportunity of getting on the horn with the governor and say, Governor, say in November, say, Governor, I've got a situation here. I've got board members that aren't showing up. I've got a backlog of work. Can you help me? That's what he could have done.
And especially with contracts and contractor licenses, it would seem that this is a daily thing. This is not like something that happens once a month.
Yeah. So when I was talking with Ray this morning, he wanted to know, well, what about Linda Ibanez, the acting director of the licensing board? And well, she could do a lot. She can go through the files, see what needs to be done, see what hasn't been done, see what was done wrong, and call a board meeting to start dealing with the problems. And if people don't show up for the board meeting, call the governor and say, Governor, these people aren't showing up. Fire them, appoint some new ones. This is just too essential to get bound up in things like Buddy Orsini and Bro and all the rest of that stuff. Okay, so that's so much for that item on the card. And so far, Levin has not filed suit against his dog. Yeah. All right, let's see who I got here. Yeah, Bob Kelly. Good morning, Bob, or good afternoon, Bob.
Good afternoon. I wasn't going to mention the G4S case till it came out publicly, but that's one that hits very close to home because a telecommunication contractor who has licenses and complies with all the laws and gets all of the necessary paperwork out of the way and has the registered RME should not have to compete with somebody coming off island without a license or somebody on island without a license. Without a license, they should be disqualified. The fact that the DOE awarded that contract is entirely wrong.
I couldn't agree more, Bob. And when you're talking G4S, I'm not real close to it, but at one time I was the general manager and vice president of the company that sold out to G4S.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But the issue is, if we're going to have licensed contractors and we're going to enforce the license, the only response that the public auditor should have is if they didn't meet the qualification, then that particular contract has to be voided. I mean, we've gotten wrapped around some other issues, but the initial issue in both of these cases is the award of a contract to somebody who went in without a contractor's license. And in the case of the solicitations, they say you must be licensed to do business on Guam, and then the board or the agencies go ahead and award the contract to somebody without the license.
Well, of course, the first appeal was to the airport board, and obviously the airport board turned down GMI's appeal. That's how it got to the public auditor.
Correct.
And the public auditor was proceeding until the matter of the contractor's licensing board came up, and then said, well, let's hang on a second here to see what's going on there. And that's when the Orsini papers surfaced.
But that Orsini issue does not make it correct to award contracting to an unlicensed contractor. That still does not fix that. I mean, there's the other issue as a separate issue, but that does not make the fact that the agency, in this case the airport, awarded a contract to an unlicensed contractor any more valid just because of the issue going on in the contractors board. They're two separate. If they don't have a license, and I think that's been pretty clear by the documentation presented, then they shouldn't have the contract. It doesn't matter. That's a separate issue, personnel and board, and whether the board has quorums and whether they meet. Those issues need to be addressed, but it does not negate the fact you have an unlicensed contractor getting a contract. That should not happen, period.
Well, are you saying then that regardless of the conduct of the appellant, it should be overlooked and the public auditor should rule only on that issue?
What I'm saying is there should be the consequences if they are merited for the issues happening in the contractor license board staff and or what happened with JMI. But that does not allow
Bob,
somebody to get
I got that. I got your point.
Okay.
Yeah, I got your point.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. The second wrong doesn't turn the other one into a right to have the contract.
Okay, well, I hear what you're saying.
I know, but you don't say. I'm surprised you're kind of disagreeing with my stand that without a license they shouldn't have the contract.
Well, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with that. Without a license, they shouldn't have the contract. But what I'm concerned about is the procedures by which some of these facts are determined and rulings made. So it's possible that a great injustice could be done by disregarding all of the procedural niceties that BJ thinks he has to comply with, and just call people in and say, you don't have a license, do you? That's my concern.
Right. And if they don't have a license, they should never have been awarded the contract. And what I'm saying is we are missing the target of an unlicensed contractor. That's what Martinez was also going with today, too. And this is the case on G4S on their contract. If you've got unlicensed contractors getting contracts, they should be nullified, period, or else there's no reason to have licensed contractors.
Yeah, I got it, Bob. So what would you do with respect then to boards and commissions that award contracts to unlicensed contractors?
That's why we are supposed to have the ability to appeal to the OPA where there's an irregularity and they didn't follow the law, and it should be negated by the OPA. But because the OPA...
My question is, what would you do with the boards and commissions that award these contracts to unlicensed contractors? Nothing?
Well, they obviously need to have some better training, and that's why we're supposed to have procurement training on the island. They've got a pretty good thing going on where they have the training by, I think it's Miss Attorney Brown, who's a procurement specialist. We have methods to get people in. That's why we have a GSA. That's why they have an attorney at GSA for procurement. These things should be watched. There needs to be oversight. And if there are missteps, then those contracts should not be awarded. I mean, that's why you have the appeal in the first place. Is if it hasn't been properly awarded, that's why people appeal the contract.
Gotta go, Bob. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Bye-bye.
What's a better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than celebrating it at Mescla with their 3-course meal? Starting off your meal with a salad appetizer, followed by a main entree of your choice, and of course, to top it all off, to make Valentine's as sweet as the day itself, a melting lava cake with vanilla ice cream and caramel sauce. So what are you waiting for? Call them at 671-649-2652 or visit mesclaguam.com for reservations. See you there.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Okay, so we got about 5 minutes here before the big halftime show, and after the big halftime show, we're going to, once again, we're going to play Hope Cristobal's screen test. I don't want to start something with such a short time going here, so I'm going to just cruise over the some of the Facebook comments here up until it's time to start the show. Lonnie Salas caught my eye, and this is what Lonnie Salas says. I don't consider myself a second-class citizen. Please stop using the word indigenous for the Chamorro Guam Marianas. Why? It sounds dirty. I'm an American, born U.S. citizen. I needed to get that off my chest. Happy Tuesday. All right. And let's see. We've Cherry Ariarte, Pam Duvall are here. Johnny Utah is here. Will probably be chiming in before we sign off, right? Chris Biolacino is publishing an announcement, and I said, "Well, let's hear it, let's see it," but I don't know what it is.
He was making my title better. I thank him because I put printing announcement and misspelled announcement. I think it was my eyes. Publishing this sound good.
Okay, all right. Publishing an announcement. Oh, I got it. Okay. And let's see. Sherry Uriarte is having a little trouble with autocorrect. Happens to all of us, doesn't it? And let's see.
It's always my story, and I stick to it.
Right. And Rico Blancafor, let's go, Brandon. I like that. That's a good comment. And he also says, good afternoon, Judge Bob, Jose, and Tall Tales Tailgaters. And let's see. Johnny Utah went to the Apple store here in Utah. They said I had to wear a mask to enter the store. Sir, SIR 3 passed the Senate here in Utah banning all mask mandates in Utah. I filed a complaint against Apple with the Utah Attorney General's office. Well, good for you, Johnny Utah.
Maybe they can make an app for that.
Yeah. And let's see, we've got MP Ogle, half a day tailgaters. And Pam Duvall, bake sale follows. After they decide that kids are going to have summer vacation, yeah. Pam says, never ask a kid if they prefer school to vacation. That's not about dumb questions.
I concur.
The legislature now has to clean up the mess that's the executive branch created. How's that denial to override Bill 11 looking? That's from our own Jose Martinez. And I got a new comment here. Okay, time for the big halftime show. Stay tuned for Hope Cristobal's screen test. We'll see you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
How resolved are they? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A lingering question about Germany's stance on Russian troops at Ukraine's border following a White House meeting between President Biden and Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
Well, the elephant in the room was just how reliable a partner Germany can be with its reliance on Russian gas. And Germany's markedly softer response to Russian aggression compared to other NATO allies has not shaken faith, apparently, here at the White House.
Germany is one of our most important allies in the world. There is no doubt about Germany's partnership with the United States. None.
German Chancellor Scholz also dancing around pressure for an ironclad commitment on Nord Stream 2 and economic sanctions involving the SWIFT international payment system, both exposing a gulf between the United States and its NATO ally.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House. Russia's President Putin says French President Macron brought some new ideas to the table when the two met in Moscow Monday, but Putin said only the West is talking about a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine. New Jersey will end its mask mandates a month from now, one of 5 states planning to back away from face mask requirements.
In California, where Gavin Newsom will end the indoor mask mandate on February 15th, but Los Angeles County, always home to the most draconian measures, will keep the mandate in place. In Connecticut, Governor Ned Lamont will end his state's mask mandate on February 28th. That includes school children. Except it really doesn't, because Governor Lamont is allowing the school districts to decide if students wear masks or not. In the meantime, Delaware is taking a different approach. Governor John Carney is ending the state mask mandate this Friday. Unless you happen to go to school in Delaware, then the mandate goes till the end of March or whenever the schools decide it's okay.
Fox's Trace Gallagher of America is listening to Fox News.
What's a better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than celebrating it at Mescla with their 3-course meal? Starting off your meal with a salad appetizer, followed by a main entree of your choice, and of course, to top it all off, to make Valentine's as sweet as the day itself, a melting lava cake with vanilla ice cream and caramel sauce. So what are you waiting for? Call them at 671-649-2652 or visit mesclaguam.com for reservations. See you there.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Good day.
The U.S. Air Force has been ordered to pay millions of dollars in damages over a murderous shooting in a Texas church.
In July, a federal judge in San Antonio had ruled the Air Force was liable in the shooting at a church in Sutherland Springs nearly 5 years ago, specifically 60% liable. Personnel had failed to report Devin Kelly's assault of his wife and stepson to a national criminal database. He'd been convicted of the assault while in the service. Reporting his record would have prevented him from purchasing guns from a licensed dealer. Kelly went on to purchase several firearms and used them in the shooting. 26 people were killed and 22 others were injured. Monday, the judge ordered the Air Force to pay $230 million in damages. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Chief White House Science Advisor Dr. Eric Lander has resigned after an internal White House investigation found that he'd bullied staff members. The U.S. Supreme Court has put on hold a lower court's ruling, meaning Alabama lawmakers won't have to redraw the state's congressional district boundaries before the 2022 elections. 2 low-cost airlines are making plans to become one, the parent company of Frontier Airlines, offering to buy Spirit. The $2.9 billion deal would create the country's 5th largest airline if shareholders from both and federal regulators approve. The federal trial of 3 Minneapolis police officers, whom prosecutors say did nothing to stop the killing of George Floyd by a fellow officer, has resumed.
The federal civil rights trial in St. Paul was in recess after one of 3 former officers on trial tested positive for COVID-19. The officers are accused of violating George Floyd's federal civil rights. Meantime, outside the federal courthouse in St. Paul, security is being strengthened as Governor Tim Walz sends in the National Guard in response to the trial. The former officers have all pled not guilty. They face criminal state charges in the case later this year. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day, this is Congressman Nicholas. While local COVID-19 testing has unfortunately become less available lately, there are 4 free at-home federally available COVID tests that you can have to test yourselves and your families as needed. Please contact your congressional office at 671-475-6453 or at michael.snicholas@mail.house.gov to find out how we can help you access those tests.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas. Nicolas.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Okay, here we are, back on Tall Tales after that big halftime show that we all like so much. Next item on the card is Hope Cristobal's screen test. I don't know if she'll make it to Hollywood or not, but we have her screen test right here, and I'm going to give you some background. You'll hear Hope Cristobal tell you that she is the one that was the author of the bill that created the Commission on Decolonization. She takes a certain amount of pride of that. That's what people refer to that commission as. There are 11 members of the commission. I would give anybody a dime who could tell me the names of any of the members, because they're almost invisible, given the fact that Melvin Wanpat pretty much does all of the, is the only visible aspect of that whole commission. But this is the real name of the commission. It's the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. Now, I tell you almost every day what that really means is independence. And I've explained to you why I come to that conclusion. So Hope is the author of that bill. And in the legislative findings in that bill, this is the first whopper that you run across when you start dealing with these things. She says the United States as a succeeding colonial power over the lands and people of Guam acceded to and recognized in the 1898 Treaty of Paris that the political rights of the native inhabitants of Guam shall be protected, and their collective right to political self-determination is inalienable. Hope says that's in the Treaty of Paris, and she put it right in her hand, and it's still there if you want to see it. Well, I cheated, and I actually went and looked at the Treaty of Paris, and if you look at Article 9, the last sentence of Article 9 reads like this: the civil rights and political status of the native inhabitants of the territories hereby ceded to the United States shall be determined by the Congress. So she starts out with a pretty good-sized lie here and then proceeds on from there. So I think that it's fair, since she takes pride in authoring the Self-Determination Commission, it's fair to say that she is the voice and face of the independence movement here on Guam. So we've run this before. We'll run it again next Monday just to make sure everybody knows who one of the prime movers here is in this movement. So go ahead, Jose, turn it on.
You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. We need to do different. We need to do better. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest and what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw, how sige dito ni Tano. Titaw-taw Tano, how? Waho gini taw-taw Tano. Waho gini malahoda. Waho na short na guy you gini. Hago taza na short mo gini. What's on you? You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please, sponsor.
Get out of here. When I get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, sponsor. Please leave. No, you think what?
What happened, ma'am?
Oh, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. I'm a malo.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
Si Diyos malasi.
He said.
So there you are. I guess by Hope Cristobal's lights, is it still playing? I'm a murderer, a white colonizer, etc.
Get off her island.
And I should get off her island. Yeah, because after all, she is the Magahaga. She's Tautanu. Yeah, and until someone comes along and contradicts what I'm going to say, I'm going to proceed on the basis that she is the face and voice of the anti-colonialism separatist movement here on the island. I don't hear Robert Underwood or Michael Bavacqua or anybody like that come along and saying, yeah, you know, we don't feel that way. Silence, I think, is something of an asset. But I don't know how Hope would take this if she knew it, but now she's going to have to put up with the most dangerous man in the room. None other than R. Carl. You know, it's too bad you weren't down there at that park in Petey when all this was going on, R. Carl. I think you would have settled the thing down in a hurry.
I don't know. I probably would have just been labeled a murderer, or half of me is a murderer anyway. But you know, there's not, despite all the talk about, you know, the sales pitch about, you know, moving to separation from America, there's really very little said about, you know, then what? You know, if they succeed, then what? You know, what kind of government can we look forward to?
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, the curtain drops, you know, just like, or parts, like, you know, toward the end of The Wizard of Oz, where the little man and the, you know, behind the green curtain is seen, you know, furiously maneuvering the machinery to make things happen. every once in a while the curtain drops, and this is one of those moments when we start to see what kind of government it would be. And you're right. It needs to be repeated over and over because it's very concerning. Over 65% of the island has no Chamorro blood. They're not as privileged as I am. I've got half of me is I've got my mom's Chamorro blood pumping through my veins. So, but even then, I don't think I would be exactly on their Christmas gift list because I'm so politically incorrect. But this pattern has been repeated many times in the 20th century, and one of them that I brought up before was in Sri Lanka, and our favorite economist and social philosopher Thomas Sowell has written about it, and I'll read a brief excerpt from it in Wealth, Poverty, and Politics, which is a excellent book. He writes, Sri Lanka, for example, was in the middle of the 20th century rightly held up to the world as a model for good relations between a majority and a minority. And its main ethnic groups were seen by observers both inside and outside the country as having good, even cordial relations with one another. There had been no riot between the Sinhalese majority and the Tamil minority during the previous half-century. The educated and westernized elites of both groups lived peacefully in the same westernized residential enclaves. Nevertheless, within a decade after Sri Lanka emerged from British rule as an independent nation in 1948, an ambitious politician named Solomon Bandaranaike, seeking the prime ministership by turning the Sinhalese majority against the more prosperous Tamil minority, set in motion group polarizations that escalated into mob violence and then a civil war that lasted a quarter of a century with unspeakable atrocities on both sides. Bandaranaike was the catalyst. Like many others who played that deadly role in other countries, Bandaranaike was no means one of the embittered poor himself. He was from an elite background and was skilled in whipping up other people's emotions for his own political purposes. And we're seeing it played out again. There's that quote that attributed to Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat itself, but it tends to rhyme. So I think we're seeing some rhyming going on here. And hopefully enough people, and especially enough Chamorros, understand how their emotions are being manipulated and can back away from supporting this, because this is all about political power, a concentration of political power. That there's just no doubt what this is about. And we need to learn the lessons of history before it's repeated again on Guam. Anyway, just some thoughts on this.
Okay, Carl, do you think Hope Cristobal will be successful in landing a role in Hollywood?
Well, if the role requires the star or co-star to lash out at people for being colonizing murderers, I think she's got a good shot.
She might be typecast in the process, but that's the price she'd have to pay. Well, thanks a lot for calling up and chiming in, Carl.
Oh, I'm always glad to, and always glad to share a thought from Thomas Sowell.
Okay, good talking to you, Carl. So that's our Carl. And, it's just something that goes on with we're spending $1 million a year on our so-called decolonization commission, which really has nothing to do with decolonization and everything to do with the independence. We talk about, how many times we go to the United Nations. That's really important. And no one has come forward with an idea of what an independent Guam would look like. And I suspect for good reason, because no one would want anybody else none of the proponents would want others to know exactly what they have in mind.
It might not just be the end game.
It might not.
Just maybe this constant struggle, or I don't know what you would call it, always at each other's faces is what is always going to be.
Yeah. So I ran across one of Robert's columns here from August of 2019, and I thought maybe I would share that with you because it really kind of lays it out for us. I noticed I got someone wanting to get in here. It's another Joe, so I'll talk to another Joe before I go
run
to
the race.
Robert's column. Go ahead, another Joe.
So I've heard something to this effect. The objective is not to win the race, but to simply have been able to participate and run in the race.
That would be very 21st century, wouldn't it? No sense.
Oh, and that's another movement, right?
Yeah.
I forget what they call it, but there's some sort of a conspiracy plot, the 21st agenda.
I'm not aware of that one.
Anyway, I think it's important to keep bringing up the issue and ask them if they have any ideas and what their suggestions are, because that's what they want. They want to be heard, and what we want is not to feel threatened by their whatever motivations we're uncertain of. But I'll just keep listening to Bob. I think it's interesting what you guys are talking about.
Okay, another Joe.
Thanks.
Good talking to you.
I think the term I was thinking of is constant conflict.
Yeah, that seems to be the game. And if the conflict were ever resolved, then some folks would have to go out and get real jobs, wouldn't they? Looks like I got Johnny Utah on the line. Just hang on for a second. It is Johnny Utah. Good afternoon, Johnny Utah.
Good afternoon, Judge Bob. Well, actually, it's night here. I'm actually about to go to bed, but I'm sitting up here listening to your show.
Good for you. Good way to spend your time. What can you tell me about decolonization, Johnny Utah?
Well, the last time I called in on your show, Frenchie called in, and, he's a really highly intelligent fella. Some of the things he says are really eye-opening. And he made the point, I think he was following along after me, about how the whole movement is really just a social, public, like you said, public affairs issue, and the whole agenda is just to cause separation of the people and anarchy, and to cause division there on the island, and destroy what is working.
Interesting thought.
It mirrors Black Lives Matter and the defund the police, and look at all the liberal prosecutors in the blue cities and what's going on with crime, and how awful things are with the crime levels here in the United States and the mainland, and there on Guam too. I listened to your famous mudracker Troy,
yeah.
and Candid. He's laid it out there, telling them what's going on. I don't think they're really listening to him too much, but I'm talking about the governor and the government of Guam, the legislature. They need to listen to him. I think he says a lot of good things, and so do you. And that was another point I was going to make. Governments all across the world now seem to be afraid of the radio. CB radios that truckers have, Joe Rogan on the radio. Before you know, they're afraid of that one gentleman. I'm having a brain fart. I forget his name. The gentleman whose son died at GMH,
Lebowski, yeah, the big Lebowski.
Yeah, they're wanting to censor him. They're trying to censor him. I'm surprised they haven't gone after you and Ray and Jose and Everyday Joe, or what's Ray's producer's name?
The real Joe Cruz. Yeah.
The real Joe Cruz. That's it.
Well,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
If anybody ever said they're coming after the real Joe Cruz, you know what he'd say? That's a laugh.
So let's go.
That's a laugh.
Put on the boxing gloves.
He'd say that's a laugh.
But have you been paying attention to the nomination that was made for the commissioner of the FCC?
Yeah.
And how that got delayed? That's dangerous. She's a dangerous woman. She's big time leftist, hates Fox, hates conservatives. But one thing that I found was interesting was One American News supported her, which is an extremely conservative program.
Sure.
So there's it's funny how the extremists support the extremists, but the people who are in the middle of the road are getting basically attacked.
True enough.
But I just wanted to say that I appreciate your show, and I hope nobody ever interferes with you guys like they're trying to do here with people like Joe Rogan and the truckers who are standing up for America's for freedoms.
Okay, Johnny Utah, we'll keep on trucking right here on Guam, right?
Amen. Let's go, Brandon.
So long. All right, Johnny Utah, all the way from Utah. So I want to pick up again on Robert Underwood because you'll recall in his last column, he said this: I've been teaching critical race theory since 1972. Every course I have ever taught and nearly every public policy speech I have given in D.C. or Guam involved critical race theory. I engaged it, analyzed it, and tried to explain how racial policies and attitudes impact our lives today and not just our history. So he's practicing it right now because, if you're really going to follow the CRT plan, what you do is you go back into history, you find something that you want to base your argument on, you attach a racial motive to it, you cite it as an example of systemic racism. Then you say that the systemic racism continues down until today. You use a little presentism in the process, and you say the only way to deal with is to do away with the system that we're in now and support and engage a new system. Now, you'll recall that Robert finally climbed on the systemic racism bandwagon too, with the little chautauqua that he had with Neil Weir, where, let's see. Yeah, let's take a quick break for the seventh inning stretch while I'm looking for that quote.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Attention Guam Power Authority commercial accounts. GPA proudly announces that our Energy Sense rebate program has just gotten bigger and better to include customers on rate schedule G and J. With GPA's Energy Sense program, commercial accounts can receive up to $350 per ton in rebates with the purchase of a qualified unit through any of our approved vendors. The GPA Energy Sense rebate program helps lower energy costs, improves energy efficiency, and saves you money. Visit us at guampowerouthority.com/energysense. Effective dates for units may vary.
Do you have a car? Do you want to get rid of it? Yeah, yes, there are people. How did you know? Here's the deal. Take your used car to the guys over at Nissan Guam, and they're going to take a look at it. And if they love it, and they probably will because you take care of things, you could get all kinds of money on this, cash for your car. Used car values are higher than ever before. They'll take all makes and models. Doesn't need to be a Nissan or an Infiniti. They'll give you a super fast appraisal, and you say, shoot, sign the papers. Now, you can use that as down payment on a brand new Nissan if you like, or maybe you need a used car. Maybe you're sitting around going, well, I got somebody's going to come in, they're moving to Guam and whatever, and they're going to need a ride, so let's go to Nissan Guam and check out the great sale. They've got the Nissan Ninja ninja sale is going on. So all those used cars that people are taking in, well, they refurb them, change out the oil and the belts and all of the things that need to get taken care of, and turn them practically into brand new automobiles and give you some incredible savings, up to $14,000 on the used car inventory. Go and take a look at it. NissanGuam.com.
So here we are, church, as you were, Wrigley Field, Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. And I found what I was looking for, but during the break, I got a couple folks here in the green room that want to get on the air. I've got Frenchie and who else? I'll just pick up Frenchie here. R. Fred. Okay. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Frenchie.
Yeah. It sounds like you got a lot of meat on that butcher block in the last 2 days.
A lot of what?
A lot of meat on that butcher block.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got your hands full.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been extremely disappointed the last 2 or 3 weeks with the Guam Daily Post. I mean, they keep sending us boilerplates for the letters to the for the editorial page. It's basically the Washington Post editorial. You know,
Exactly.
if I wanted to read the Washington Post, I would subscribe to it. I don't need to buy the Guam Daily Post to read what the stupid Washington Post thinks, especially since they are so way out there on the left and doing the bidding of a multi-billionaire. So, you know, I'm extremely disappointed. I mean, for a while we thought with the new ownership maybe there will be some improvement over the McClatchy, but it looks like they're sliding back in the same thing. There are more articles from Reuters, the LA Times, and the Washington Post than from the PDN. Oh, sorry, the Guam Daily Post. It's just extremely disappointing, especially as you are showing and as Troy is showing on Candid News. There are a lot of very important things going on, corruption, conflict of interest and things, and they are barely talking about it. So that was my entry remarks regarding those things, and I would appreciate also if you could put in your cards in the upcoming days a bigger analysis about two of the potential Republicans that might throw their hat in the arena. One being Moylan, going back for the Attorney General's office. The other Moylan, not little Jimmy. And of course, Governor Camacho, who is trying to maybe do a comeback and run again for governor. And I think it would be very interesting to hear your analysis, since you have worked around those people and you have a good historical background on all those people and what they've done right and not so right, and what they could bring to the table for the voters to consider.
Okay,
So,
Frenchie, when the time is right, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting. So another remark was on what Bob was saying earlier regarding the licensed contractors and everything. The only I do agree with him regarding, contractors should be licensed on Guam and so on and so forth. The only drawback I see with this, of course, is that you might have kind of a little mafia of only 3 or 4 contractors that get all the contracts, And we might end up paying a higher price as far as taxpayers. And I've seen this in other states, and other states usually put, when they give a bid to an out-of-state contractor, they usually put a caveat into it, which is that the said contractor should be licensed in the state within 30 to 40 days in order for the bid to be valid. So there is a conditional line in the bidding acceptance of a good bid, or what they consider being a good deal, which means that everybody kind of wins at the same time. And, we also get, because we are a very small market, so it would not make a lot of sense for a big company to register in Guam in advance if they are not sure that they could get contracts. So, and a lot of companies do that depending on the states. Like you have small states like Wyoming or Idaho or even the Dakotas that do use that kind of a trick. It's kind of a trick in a way, in order to satisfy the legal proceedings of their state regulations. So I don't know what you think about that, but that was another thing.
Oh, that's a good point, Frenchie.
Yeah. Regarding what Johnny Utah was saying regarding, people trying to cancel shows and so on, if you study resistance movement around the world for the last 200 years, even earlier, you find out that usually the resistance is only encompass a very small percentage of society. The large majority of societies usually kind of try to get along and make sure their families survive. If that means that they have to take steps that they do not like, they do. They try not to bring attention to them, and they do not resist so much. The resistance is usually very pissed off younger people who are not really conscious of the danger they're facing, and usually older, very experienced people who do understand what we are facing and understand the value of resisting to what is being imposed on them at whatever time we're talking about. And this is a little bit what we've experienced in the last couple of years all over the Western world, and we have seen abuse by governments and certain types of politicians that have been taking advantage of the fear they have installed in people, basically a fear of dying, which is very interesting. It would not be so strong, I think, if God was back in the center of people's lives, because I don't know if you're like me, but I do not fear death. I do not want to die right away, but I'm not fearing death either. It's I believe we're just on a passage here on this earth, and to go hopefully in a better world if we have not done too many things wrong. So, but because people have walked away so much from religion and traditions and things, I think it's a lot more easy to scare people that do not have beliefs and just have a very narrow comprehension about what life is all about. So it's very interesting. And that Joe Rogan thing, it's kind of typical, because now you have groups like Rumble that are offering him $100 million to move on to their site in order to bring his show, which is very popular and has a lot more listeners than any of the networks. So it's very fascinating. And then finally, I don't know if I have much time, but one thing that I've been making me very worried about is that all the neocons in Washington, D.C. are basically backing up Biden on a false flag operation against the Russian, which seems extremely dangerous, Because A, the Russians have no interest of invading Ukraine. It would be so stupid for them to do so. And I don't think that Putin is that stupid. He looks, he might not be a very nice guy, but he's not an idiot, far from it. And what we see is that the same people that are pushing war with the Russians since 1989 forget that Russia is no longer a communist country. It is basically a westernized country, and they are also the second largest nuclear power in the world, and their military has been modernized quite extensively in the last 10 years under Putin. I think it is playing with fire in order to take away the focus of the American people on the dismal management of the Wuhan crisis by the Biden administration and the total disaster of the southern border and the evacuation in Afghanistan. And I think they are playing with this in order to kind of refocus people's attention on something else that is non-existing. And they are doing it in a very stupid manner. And also, when you go down that pathway, you never know how it's going to end. And it could end very ugly if we are not careful. And unfortunately, outside of Senator Rand Paul and maybe people like, what's his name on CNN, the guy with the bow tie, there are very few voices in the conservative side that are calling the administration for what it is, which is basically a lie trying to put us back in a war where we have no interest of going. It's almost as big of a lie as the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and we've seen the disaster that Iraq turned out to be. So I want people to really pay attention to what's going on, because it is impacting us a lot here as well. And, sending the 101st or the 82nd Airborne to Eastern Europe is stupid. They might be excellent troops, but they are light infantry, and you don't fight tanks. If things turn ugly, you don't fight tanks with light infantry. You're just sending light infantry to be slaughtered, and this is very stupid, especially those are two of the most beautiful units of the U.S. Army. I think our political leaders are really very irresponsible. And I call everybody to look a little deeper in what's happening to see what's going on here. And it is not the way we want to go.
Good talking to you, Frenchie. I gotta go to Churchill Downs.
All right, I finished my preach. Thank you.
Subway keeps the Eat Fresh Refresh subs rolling in with the fresh take on timeless classics. Try the honey mustard rotisserie style chicken. It's the new Subway rotisserie style chicken with a flavor upgrade, mizzled with honey mustard on hearty multigrain bread and topped with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Craving some heat? The Baja Turkey Avocado hits all the hot notes. Oven roasted turkey stacked high on hearty multigrain speared with smashed avocado and drizzled with the piquant chipotle sauce. Tuck into new subs to savor at Subway. Eat fresh.
Day, this is Congressman Nicholas. While local COVID-19 testing has unfortunately become less available lately, there are 4 free at-home federally available COVID tests that you can have to test yourselves and your families as needed. Please contact your congressional office at 671-475-6453 or at michael.snicholas@mail.house.gov to find out how we can help you access those tests.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
So here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville. You heard the call to the post. The starting gate's going to open in a minute. I'll be heading down the home stretch, and maybe 6 furlongs or so I'll cross the finish line and wrap up another exciting, educational, interesting episode of Tall Tales. But helping me run for the for that finish line. I've got Bob Kelly, and I had our Fred, but I lost our Fred. What happened to our Fred?
It's a slip through the...
Call back, our Fred. Okay, Bob Kelly wants to... This is Bob's second ride on the merry-go-round, so go for it, Bob.
Well, I wanted to make a comment with Frenchie. He made the comment that if a off-island contractor bid, that they should be given 30 days or something to comply.
He didn't say that, Bob. He said that that is a practice in some other states.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That when he said it could be good here to get better pricing. The one thing I would say, however, is the local contractors who are currently paying to have their facilities here, paying their staff here, paying their taxes here, should at least have a 10% or something advantage, because it's more expensive to operate a contracting company, keeping the staff and operating on Guam than it would be if you're in Arizona or Nevada or somewhere. And by having them without the expenses of keeping a presence on Guam, if it was just purely price, then you'd be disadvantaging the local people who are sustaining the tax base, sustaining the employment, and participating in the community. So it's not just an even exchange, I don't believe. There has to be a preference for locals just out of fairness.
Well, as Thomas Sowell would say, there are no solutions, there are only alternatives. But thanks for contributing again, Bob.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, so we got, let's see, 15 more minutes to go here. And I saw an interesting post just before I was talking with Bob here. Gene Nettie says, Sir Bob, has anyone shared any stats of how many on Guam actually would side with the fanatical perspectives of the Cristobal lady? I don't know how you would develop statistics on that. I suppose the young man down at the park saying to Paul Zerzan, you have to go. You have to go would be...
And then Mob Rule took over. But I don't know if that's a poll.
Mob Rule is a poll. It's an instant, very effective poll, yeah. Okay, so as I was saying before, Robert Underwood told us on Friday in his column that he's been teaching critical race theory since 1972. Every course I have ever taught and nearly every public policy speech I have given in D.C. or Guam involved critical race theory. I engaged it, analyzed it, and tried to explain how racial policies and attitudes impact our lives today and not just our history. And I pointed out before the break that this is the classic critical race theory approach to things. Start out with a historical event that you can paint in the light most unfavorable to the, let's see, the two categories are, boy, I just lost it here. I want to say not the victims, but the
oppressed.
The oppressed and the oppressor. Thank you, Jose. Yeah. So you find out, you search history and you find out something where you can paint the oppressor in the most unfavorable light. And of course, the oppressor is always the white Christian, usually male. Jewish will work also. Yeah. And then everybody else is the oppressed. So you find that, you paint the oppressor in the light most unfavorable to that person or that group. You ascribe what happened to systemic racism. You say that systemic racism continues up until this day. You use a lot of presentism. And you say that the systemic racism is so deeply entrenched that the only solution is to junk the system and come up with a new system. In the mainland, that would be Marxism. Here, it would be independence. And I've got an article or a column that Robert wrote back in August of 2019 that I thought really kind of lays it out again really clearly. And it ran in the Daily News, the title, "The Empire Strikes Back. Guam's fight for self-determination isn't over." Now, I see the use of the words self-determination as meaning only one thing, independence. You may disagree, but if we get into it, I think it's very difficult to maintain that it could possibly mean anything else, or else it means nothing at all, one of the two. Local musicians and poets join independent, as you were. No nation is perfect, but nations usually attempt to perfect themselves. Nations usually attempt to perfect themselves? I don't know about that. That was the original promise of the American Republic. Our Fred came back. I'm just going to interrupt here and give our Fred a minute since he came back on the line. Go ahead, our Fred.
Hey, bro, how you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, Par. Oh, sorry. Oh man, are you gonna invoke BLM or CRT now?
Sota Prim.
Oh man, I'm sorry I called you bro. So, man, on an island, I think it's okay to say hey bro or Prim, Par, Pari, right? And not get canceled out as Eddie Lau did, I guess. I think one of the other callers mentioned about the license. I think that's the main argument here is to practice business on Guam or a contract. You have to be licensed to practice on Guam or garner a contract. So that's the main issue here. I don't think it's the hey bro part.
Well, I agree, but you have to remember this, that when you have a government, there has to be a set of procedures that government officials follow when they reach a result. Otherwise, instead of having a government reach the result, you're just going to get individual preferences. And
right.
It's kind of like, consider a criminal case. Let's say that we had an ironclad case against a criminal. We found we did a search. We found evidence. We showed him the evidence. When we showed him the evidence, he confessed, etc. And the guy is as guilty as sin. He goes to court. He gets a sharp lawyer. The lawyer says the search was illegal. The fruits of the search are fruits of the poisonous tree. Is able to suppress the fruits of the poisonous tree to include the confession. A jury lets the guy go. So, what I'm hearing from some folks is that doesn't matter. Forget about the search. Forget about the confession. Forget about the rules. If he did the crime, then we got to punish him. Everything else is immaterial. I just don't think that it's quite that simple, our Fred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we'll leave the old bro part, out. Let's stick on the facts,
Well, that is a fact. That is one fact that we're absolutely sure of.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Stick to the fact, that. Going on to this decolonization, I thought we were done with it through our discussion. So many times we talked about it. The people don't want to be independent from the U.S. I think the only person who wants it, bro, is the author. In the video you played,
sure,
she said she authored the decolonization.
Right.
I think she's the only one who wants it, and probably Mike and maybe Robert.
Yeah, I think so. And you never know. There are young, impressionable people, emotional people that can be influenced about these things. So I think it's really important that, because no one else is talking about it. Other people, I think, are themselves afraid of being canceled. Oh, I don't want to say anything about that because, I don't want anybody to think I'm anti-Chamorro.
I mean, you just have to think about all the things that will be taken away from the people of Guam if they gain independence. And that truth will only come out, it seems, when it actually, if Guam ever does gain independence, and then the people are going to be very disappointed that they don't have all these other perks. I think the actions of the people of Guam show they want to be part of the U.S. It shows.
That's the way I read it, our Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say, Bob. I mean, bro.
Okay. Good talking to you, bro.
All right. All right.
Let's go, Brandon. Good talking to you, our Fred. Yeah, so I got just a few more minutes to go, so I'll go a little bit farther into Robert's column from 2019. No nation is perfect, but nations usually attempt to perfect themselves. That was the original promise of the American Republic. It was founded on the shoulders of Europeans and on the backs of Indians and African slaves. Yeah.
There you go.
Land was taken from original owners, and labor was taken without compensation under the most inhumane conditions. In the original Constitution, slaves were counted as 3/5 of a person for purposes of congressional representation, even though they were not citizens and couldn't vote. Now, if you say something like this, you might just as well write in there, by the way, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
It's in the Constitution, though.
Yeah, it is. He found this language in the Constitution. So here's the story, Robert. During the Constitutional Convention, the southern states, the slave states, said we need to count, when we have that census, we count every single person, slave, free, or whatever. And the folks up north, the anti-slavers, said, no, we don't count any of them because they can't vote. So like with so many other things in the Constitution, the best they could come up with was the 3/5 compromise. But it's not anything like you're saying here, Robert. In the original Constitution, slaves were counted as 3/5 of a person for purposes of congressional representation, even though they were not citizens and couldn't vote. That's kind of like saying, that's kind of like saying, when I was in Washington, I was invited to have dinner with President Trump. And Robert's question is, what'd you have to eat? He goes on to say, yet in a country in spurts defined and redefined itself in increasing inclusive ways. So maybe he is telling the truth about, using the word inclusive here. As it dealt with the original stain of slavery and land expropriation, enslaving humans and taking their land was justified largely on the racist perception of entire groups of people. The country then took nearly half of Mexico and invaded islands and ruled them under some notion of manifest destiny. The destiny was self-evident. It ruled offshore areas under an invented judicial concept called unincorporated territory. It too was justified on racial perceptions about the inadequacy of non-Anglo-Saxons to govern themselves.
Nope.
This is where Guam entered the picture. Yet there were people who stepped forward to accelerate the effort to be inclusive while dealing with the racist imperialist legacy of the country. It was bumpy, and we have now driven our car into the biggest pothole of them all. Guam is officially denied the right to Chamorro. Now listen to this. Guam is officially denied the right of Chamorro self-determination. Guam is denied? Well, I got plenty here to talk about. If I don't talk about it tomorrow, I'll come back to it. Another beautiful day here on Tall Tales. I got to sign off with the usual, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
More mask mandates falling. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Several states planning to end their mask mandates or allow them to expire in the next few weeks, including New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, and California.
Governor Newsom brought back the masking mandate regardless of vaccination status in mid-December. This was as the Omicron surge was just getting started. Last month, he extended it through February 15th, and state health officials announced that mandate will end on that date next Tuesday. The state is also lifting its requirement that people test negative before visiting hospitals and nursing homes. That is effective immediately. Now, a couple of caveats that are important here. Lifting the state mandate does not apply to school children, so kids will still need to be masked in the classroom. If you are not vaccinated, you are still required to wear a mask indoors.
That's Marla Tellez of Fox 11 in Los Angeles. In New York, police officers taunted after leading 10 anti-vax protesters away in handcuffs after they'd entered a Times Square movie theater and refused to show proof they'd been vaccinated. The Canadian government continues to crack down on a protest by truck drivers demanding an end to mask and vaccine mandates. Ottawa's mayor calling it an insurrection, and the city's police chief, Peter Slowly, saying,
"We are stretched to the limit, but we are 100% committed to using everything we have to end this demonstration,"
including arresting people bringing fuel to the truckers. President Biden threatening Monday to stop the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline between Russia and Germany if Russian troops invade Ukraine, speaking after a meeting with Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
If Russia makes a choice to further invade Ukraine, we are jointly ready, and all of NATO is ready.
French President Macron met with Russia's President Putin in Moscow Monday night, urging